just get started with a little bit of information, preliminary information, and some of the housekeeping for the session. And then we'll get going with the whole presentation. Hopefully Mike and Fels will join us as we're underway. Key thing today is looking at the PowerPoint slide deck. Our objective is to look at a snapshot of the financing ecosystem in Vancouver. It's part of Vancouver Startup Week. So I'd like to discuss who is involved, which funds, which individuals, which groups are investing now, and why are they investing now. And finally, we're going to close by crystal balling a little bit of the future. We're going to talk about the next 9 months. Ask our panel members what they think is going to happen in the investment community and what the trends will be over the next time period. So just wanted to also indicate that there are a number of other webinars going on as part of Vancouver Startup Week. Vancouver Enterprise Forum is later today. Venture Labs is doing 2 webinars tomorrow. One of them is about digital marketing. That's at 12:30. And then at 1:30, we're also doing a webinar on customer discovery and rediscovery, something that we see as very important for early stage companies. One thing I would like to highlight for everyone is the idea that we're doing market validation training. So if you're an early stage company and you are interested in going through understanding how you fit the market and moving your company forward, Venture Labs is running a program. We have 16 companies registered so far, early stage companies, and it starts on Monday the 5th, next Monday at 1 p.m. If you're interested, please contact us. I'm Dave at venturelabs.ca. We also have the legal documentation program that starts next week, and of course the Vantech Angel Network, which we'll discuss a bit more in this webinar, starts on Wednesday of next week. So it's just a week tomorrow. So our agenda for today, we'll go through some introductions. Really, our focus is raising money from angels. The startup sector is really dominated by angel financing. It's something that we think is important. We'll draw a very simple ecosystem map, talk about the different groups that are participants, how you would categorize them. We've arbitrarily categorized different parts of the market. What are the events where you can go to meet angel investors? A lot of them are virtual right now, but who are active? Which angel funds are active? And quite often angel funds are surrogate for individuals. And then finally, the service providers. When we talk about service providers, we'll discuss lawyers and accountants. We'll also discuss some of the groups that are active in the marketplace who will help you prepare in order to raise money and assist you with all sorts of different services. And finally, we'll have Q&A. So I'd like to do introductions of our panelists. Wonder if we could start. Is Thalzel with us right now? Has she joined us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's great. Thank you very much. Thalzel, if you could just give us a very brief introduction of yourself, how you're active in the angel finance market with Vantech and eFund. Please go ahead.
Great. So I run the Vantech Angel Network. It was founded by my colleague Mike Volker, and hopefully he'll join us soon. Back in April 1999, and we've been meeting every single month since then. So we're just starting our 22nd year. We're also a founding member of the National Angel Capital Organization, which is a professional angel organization, and we're also members of the American-based Angel Capital Association. So we run that, and for now over 21 years, we've had investors view entrepreneur pitches every single month. And our last event was just on September 8th. And now we're going to be having our next meeting on October 7th. So hopefully you guys can all log into that. Go to vantech.ca, vantec.ca, and log on to the event on the calendar of your choice and just sign up, and we'll hopefully see you there. Now, our Vantech members are individual angel investors. We're joined by 2 of them, Hans and Jim, and of course, hopefully Mike will be there. Make it 3. But we're also there are also funds that are participants as Vantech Angel members, and 2 of the funds are the ones that Mike and I run. I run the eFund, and Mike runs the WIDF. So happy to be here, Dave.
Great, thank you. Mike Volker, are you online, Mike? If Mike is a viewer on this, maybe we could ask if they could upgrade Mike to a presenter so he can join us. In Mike's absence, I'll come back and introduce him at the end if he is not able to join us in person. But Jim, could I ask you to give us a quick introduction of what you do and where you are?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you who've joined us today. This is going to be an interesting conversation about funding and one that we all talk about a lot amongst ourselves, so we're eager to share with you. I've been an angel investor for about 15 years. I'm currently a member of both the Bellingham Angels in Washington State, as well as eFund in British Columbia. And so I look at deals on both sides of the border. I'll be happy to tell you more about that as we get going and answer any of your questions at that point.
Jim, am I correct that you're in Bellingham? So your primary residence is in the U.S., so you're part of...
No, actually, my primary residence is in British Columbia, up in Whistler.
All right. Good stuff. Hans, more of a senior investor, but also active as an angel. Perhaps you can introduce yourself, Yaletown, and a little bit about the CBCA, please.
Sure. First of all, glad to be part of today's forum. I think it's going to be very informative and nice to see we have a large online attendance. I think it's an important issue, how to get yourself financed and the different options available. So my perspective on today's forum really has got kind of two main components. One, as one of the founders of and a partner of Yaletown Partners, which is an institutional venture capital fund based in British Columbia. We've been around for just under 20 years, have invested in several dozen companies, both in BC as well as outside the province, predominantly in Canada, but BC is where the majority of our cash has gone. We're typically a Series A investor, so companies that have a couple million in revenue is generally where we tend to get on the bus. But we do see and we watch a lot of companies that are earlier stage that we follow for sometimes a year to a year and a half before we ultimately end up writing a check. So, we've got certainly that perspective. We deal with a lot of angel investors who are often investors in deals before we get active. They send us a lot of deal flow. So we've got quite a bit of functional overlap, even though most of our funding occurs in the sort of the slightly later stage than the angel type stage. I also sit on the board, and I'm the vice chair of the umbrella organization for all of Canada for the venture capital and private equity industries, which is the CVCA. And that's an agency that I think continues to monitor closely what's going on with deal flow and funding of deals across the country. So we're involved with things like pushing tax policy, and other things with the federal government primarily, and speaking as kind of the unified voice for all of the venture and private equity investors in Canada. And then finally, I do have our own sort of family bucket of investments that we make into angel deals. I've done several in British Columbia, so have empathy for what it's like to be on that side of the table, as well as someone taking the money, but also providing it as an angel person. So glad to be here this morning.
Great, thank you, Hans. Is Mike Volker with us? So unfortunately, Mike isn't.
Mike's on screen, Dave.
Yeah, he's missing. He just has to come off mute.
Okay, well, that's great. Mike, are you able to unmute yourself and join us? Actually, while we're waiting for Mike to get going, I'll just introduce myself very briefly. My name is Dave Thomas. I'm the Director of Programs at Venture Labs and a partner with Rocket Builders, which is a consulting company here in Vancouver. We're probably best known for doing the Ready to Rocket list each year. I myself am a minor angel investor. I have money in a number of funds. So for example, I'm an investor in WIDF. I have money in Tamaya. Also an investor in the Working Opportunity Fund and in the BC Discovery Fund. Mike, are you able to speak? In order to save a little bit of time, I think I'll introduce Mike very briefly, and if he is able to speak, I'll ask him to interject. So
Sorry,
Mike
Dave, 1 second. Sorry to interrupt. Mike, are you on a computer with a mic or a jack? If so, can you plug in some headphones, please? And I don't think Mike's Wi-Fi connection is fast enough because he can't see everyone.
Okay. That's unfortunate.
Mike, can you hear me? Can you thumbs up if you can hear me? Do this if you can hear me. Okay, do you have headphones? If you have headphones, can you grab them and plug it in? We'll try that because it might actually just be his computer mic's not picking him up or something.
Okay.
And then Dave, can you see everyone because you can't see Mike? Is that?
Right now, I can see full screen of the PowerPoint. And,
okay. So it's.
And I don't want to take it off full screen.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
The print gets quite small.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay.
We will give this a shot.
All right.
All right, Mike, do you want to say something and let's just test it out?
Is this working?
Mike, I think it's actually something with your computer because the second you plug in headphones, it should automatically flip over and we still can't hear you. So it might actually be your computer.
Well, in order to get things moving, what I'd like to do is I'll briefly introduce Mike. We've associated him here with the Western University Technology Innovation Fund and also the Vantech Angel Network. As Falzel said earlier on, Mike was the originator of Vantech, a founder also of New Ventures BC, of the Vancouver Enterprise Forum, very active investor and someone who's been a big part of the angel investment community in Vancouver and all of BC for many years. Woodif is quite active, and unless I'm mistaken, in the last year, Woodif has made over 20 investments in very early stage companies. I'd like to move on now and just say very briefly what we're trying to do really is describe the financing ecosystem, identify many of the players with a focus on the next couple of quarters, and then look at who is part of it and how do they interact. And finally, we'll crystal ball the next 6 to 9 months with our panel members. So we have an ecosystem map here that shows really 4 red balls which revolve around individual angels. One of the key characteristics of an angel is that they usually invest their own money, and many of them are active helping the companies that do things. They do not act as professionals. They individually invest their own funds. But if we look at angel events, we've talked about Vantech is here. Jim, as a representative of Bellingham Angels, is involved. We have angel funds. Woodif and E-funds are 2 of the items that are part of the different funds that are active. And when we say an angel fund, it's usually a group of angels who put money together so they can do more investments than they would do if they were acting as individuals. Finally, there's venture capital funds, which are later stage investors, as Hans said earlier on, probably in the A round, B round category. And Hans is representing from Yaletown. And then the service providers. And we mentioned New Ventures BC and Venture Labs, but there are a whole host of service providers who are active in this space. Falzel, could you just comment very briefly on the idea of how they interconnect and the concept that some of the events are used as a little bit of a filter for some of the angels who are active in the marketplace? Falzel?
She's talking, but we can't hear her.
Certainly. It helps when you unmute. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so certainly we try our best to cooperate and collaborate with each other in the ecosystem. It's really bad for investors and for entrepreneurs if we're siloed and we don't communicate with each other. So let's start with the angel events. There are several that meet on a regular basis. We already talked about the Vantech Angel Network meeting every single month since April 1999. And we also have Angel Forum, which meets on a frequent basis as well, and they hold a lot of educational aspects. So we and Bellingham, of course, Jim, I'll leave you to talk about Bellingham, but there are lots of angel events, and what usually happens.
Sure.
Sorry, what usually happens.
So I'm going to go to the next slide, which lists a lot of them.
Right. Okay. So what usually happens is that when entrepreneurs pitch at angel events, we refer the entrepreneurs to all the other angel events in the ecosystem. It's actually standard operating procedure for Vantech to do so. And then, of course, we have representatives of investors in the audience as individual angels or angel funds. Because a lot of individual investors will invest on their own or through angel funds or both.
So Thalzo, how many companies would present at a typical Vantech Angel Network meeting, and approximately how many investors might be in the audience?
Vantech usually attracts more than 100 people, of which 2/3 are actual angel investors or part of funds. And we usually view between 15 to 20 investments. We have 2 tiers of entrepreneurs. We have 90-second pitches, and then those get upvoted and go through a further screening before they come back and pitch full presentations, which are 5 minutes presentation time, 5 minutes Q&A.
So am I correct in the assumption that quite often the Vantech Angel Network is the first stage that early stage company would go through? And if things are going well, they may move on to present at Angel Forum or another one of the events. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. As I had mentioned earlier, our standard operating procedure is to refer our entrepreneurs, particularly the ones that make it up to the full presentation level, to other angel groups in our ecosystem. We have a very close partnership with the American-based Keiretsu Forum, where Vancouver is actually one of the stops in their 5-city tour. And that particular angel group takes very late stage entrepreneurs. They would compete with VC Series A, and just at the last Keiretsu Forum, we had a couple of companies that were presenting Series B level, really quite late stage.
You know, Thiasso, can I just interrupt for a moment? Because I think another place where we work together is we have a monthly regional call amongst all the angel groups in the Pacific Northwest, including British Columbia. And typically each group comes to that monthly meeting saying, here are the companies we're looking at, here are the ones we're doing due diligence on. And so we sort of cross-pollinate our interest in companies with the broader group at that point in time.
That's an excellent point, Jim. We actually have a meeting just like that later today.
Good.
2 of the other events that I'd like to just bring people to notice, one of them is the Angel Forum, and it runs events bi-weekly. The number of companies that present is lower. Could somebody comment? Am I correct that it's 2 or 4 companies that present at Angel Forum in each one of their bi-weekly events?
It's 2 companies every 2 weeks. And then there's the events, like they just finished one up in Okanagan, and we have one in Whistler here October 7th to 9th. And there'll be 6 presenters at each of those, I believe.
Okay, great. And Valhalla Angels is similar as well. When they were doing in-person events, they normally would have 4 companies which would present, and they'd start with a larger pool and help the companies prepare for the angel event that they run. Their virtual ones right now feature 2 companies. As Jim mentioned earlier on, we have the Okanagan Angel Summit. It's not exclusive to the Okanagan, just as the one in Victoria, the Capital Investment Network, that also meets monthly. They are not exclusive to any one group. People quite often move back and forth. You don't see angels from Florida necessarily investing in British Columbia, but the market in BC moves from city to city and across the border. Just one other one we have in the bottom 3 are US-based agencies or organizations. Jim, could you comment very quickly on the Alliance of Angels, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about angel organizations in Washington State in general. Unlike British Columbia, there's typically an angel organization in each major city. So, for example, there's an angel organization in Spokane, and there's actually 4 that I can think of based in Seattle. And then, of course, Bellingham Angels formed in 2005. And so we not only cross-pollinate companies that we meet, but then we often do what's called syndication. When we start doing due diligence, we work together on doing the due diligence. And the last thing I'd mention is that it's interesting, but we are all tied in with the Canadian consulate as well as BC Trade's office in Seattle. And so many companies I actually meet for the first time in the United States and not Canada, many Canadian companies, because they go to BC Trade or they go to the Seattle consulate, and who in turn refer them right back up to us in Bellingham. So we meet Canadian companies on both sides of the border. And typically, most of the groups, especially Bellingham, we look about at 25% of the companies that present to us are in fact Canadian companies.
All right, that's good. A couple other things I'll mention on the right-hand column. There are technology events with an investment theme embedded in them. One is the BC Tech Summit, the Traction Conference, the Vancouver Enterprise Forum, which will actually be part of Vancouver Startup Week later today. And Volition runs a whole series of pitch events for early stage companies and entrepreneurs to practice their actual pitch. Larger VC events, the Vancouver Economic Commission will be doing a VC investor showcase in early December with an artificial intelligence theme. And that's something that we can anticipate hearing more information about over the coming months. And finally, the Canadian Financing Forum is typically held in early in the year. One thing I will note, though, is that the BC Tech Summit, the Traction Conference, and the Canadian Financing Forum were not held in the last year because of COVID. I'd like to move on to angel funds. Is Mike with us yet? Or back with us?
Here he is.
Mike, are you able to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm using my smartphone. To heck with the laptop.
Okay, that's good. Mike, could you tell us a little bit about how Wood is active?
I'm sorry, did somebody just say something?
I wonder if you were looking at the angel funds that are active in the province. I was wondering if you'd give us a quick rundown on what Wood has been doing in terms of the type of investments, how many, and the dollars you invest over the last 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, sure. No, What If has been active since 2003, and we've done 107 investments so far. We do a little bit more than one a month. Our sweet spot is $100,000 in startups. And we usually do that as part of a $500 to $1 million round. And we often will lead the round. So we may be the ones that work out a term sheet with the entrepreneur. And then we help find other investors and complete a seed round.
Great. Super. Let's just talk about eFund. Fellas, could you give us some specifics about eFund and maybe tell us about a recent investment that you've made?
Right. So eFund invests slightly later stage than Woodif, but we do overlap and sometimes we co-invest in the same deals. We also do a lot of deals that we co-invest with a Series A VC. So we, involve VCs such as Pangea, and I think in the past we involved Yaletown on one of our investments, which actually had an exit, which was really nice. Our eFund works on a team basis and on cohorts. So we have very defined cohorts every 2 years. Right now we're on cohort number 4. In a few days we'll be opening up cohort number 5, and cohort number 4 right now has 15 different investments. That's 13 new investments and 2 rights exercises for current eFund investments. Our latest investment from eFund 4 is a local company, or Okanagan-based company called Barrelwise, and we had a lot of people from different groups and being on our due diligence team, because we really do emphasize the team. We had someone from Keiretsu Forum who was on our team. We had Jim Thompson, who represented Bellingham, on our team. And then we had 3 other e-funders on our team. In fact, Jim really liked our method so much he became an e-funder himself. Yay!
Okay. Great, thank you. There's a couple of the other funds. We won't speak to all of them, but I was wondering if I could ask Hans to talk to a couple that he might be familiar with. Either they've worked with them through Yaletown, or he's seen recent investments from a couple of the funds that we've listed here. Hans, are you able to comment for us?
I think we lost Hans.
Uh-oh, so we've lost him. Okay, I will speak to a couple of them.
He's
He's coming back in.
Okay. Hans, are you able to hear me?
Yep. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened on my machine here, but hopefully you can all hear and see me now.
Okay. Hi, Hans. Just asking if you could comment on some of the funds that are listed. For example, I know you're familiar with a couple at the bottom and maybe with Rhino Ventures as well. If you could give us a thumbnail of what they're doing and what their focus in the market is.
Yeah, so a number of these funds, similar to what Thalsil was just saying, they kind of straddle what I'll call slightly later stage angel investing and let's call it really sometimes relatively early Series A type of investments. So I'm aware of a couple of funds located outside of British Columbia, Sprout Fund in Alberta, and then Good News Ventures out of Ontario, both of whom have been active in the local market, so BC, specifically Vancouver, Victoria area, this calendar year. And, similar to when eFund was positioned and so forth, they're typically kind of $100,000 to $200,000 initial check writers. And then with some follow-on reserves for a follow-on, let's say there's a Series A or a financing after that. Rhino, similarly, they were, I think, in one of their earlier funds positioned. But now they're probably closer to what I'll call later stage angel investing, sort of a Series A type of player. But all of the ones that are listed here, Women's Equity Lab, also in Victoria, has been active lately. These are all groups that currently have capital, are looking for deals, syndicate with angels, understand kind of market-based terms, and I think are impressed with the kind of vitality and the quality of the local ecosystem. And having them in your deal can often be quite helpful in terms of setting the appropriate milestones and expectations for management teams as they then look to get more, I'll call it more, I don't want to say more sophisticated capital because that implies that angels aren't sophisticated, but I think more structured capital is probably the better line to use as part of the company's needs to grow.
Great, thank you, Hans. I'll just note 2 other little things. I know Women's Equity Lab has opened a chapter in Vancouver, so they're starting to be active in the Vancouver market. And Highline Beta is one of the more recent funds to enter the market. And they are actively looking for deals, is what we've been told. There are a couple of new entrants that are going to come into the marketplace. So Maven Capital is out of Kelowna. It's Brody DeSimone is the person who's the head of that, and they will become active probably later in 2020 or in 2021. Integrity Analytics is somewhat similar. It's Toronto-based, and we anticipate them entering the marketplace here in 2021, early in 2021. And then Go Paladin, I don't know much about, but they will be introduced tonight by the Vancouver Enterprise Forum. They're from Silicon Valley. So interesting to get more activity and more interest from the California angel groups. So I'm going to move on to venture capital funds. And again, there's a series of different categorizations here. I'm going to ask Hans to start off by giving us his sort of take on who does later seed and Series A rounds. Which of the firms that are on the list here are active and which ones are doing that type of investing?
Sure. So just a couple of ways to slice this. When we talk about the stage, I think it's also important to look at particular sectors, just because certain funds invest only within particular sectors. So looking at this, BDC is typically sector agnostic. They do IT as well as manufacturing, sort of clean tech, as well as biotech deals. Chrysalix, to my knowledge, are not particularly active currently and haven't been for some time, at least not in British Columbia. Their focus in the past was almost entirely just on clean tech deals, usually very early clean tech deals that were technology heavy, but I have not seen much from them of late. Framework is a spin out from BDC, which is their IT group. So they are an IT investor, typically late angel rounds, although perhaps with more of a preference for doing early types deals. But once again, software based, so no biotech there. Pangea are more of a material science focus, but they do invest early. Pender is positioned similarly to Yaletown in terms of their stage of entry, which is typically sort of early to mid Series A, depending on your level of growth, and generally a focus on IT, enterprise, vertical market software, and software for infrastructure. Version 1 is an earlier stage player, sort of a professional angel fund run by Boris Wirtz. Definitely an active investor around the world, but also with some investments here in British Columbia. Versant, to my knowledge, some capital, it's mainly more on the biotech side. Vantage as well, their prior focus was on the gaming type applications, and I understand more of late they focus more on software, sort of enterprise software and security type applications. Have not seen them doing any new deals recently, but my knowledge is they do have capital and are looking. Seven Gate, I don't know. I've not run into them. I've not crossed paths with them. And then outside BC, the ones that are listed here, Voyager is active. They just came into one of our deals in British Columbia. Lumira on the biotech side, a very well regarded investor from Eastern Canada, does have capital and is looking for deals in BC. Scale Up, I don't believe are as active anymore as they were before. I'm not aware of them having done a new deal in the last year to year and a half in BC. And Panache, I know are looking. They've attended several angel events, so they certainly have a desire to look at and do deals out in the West here. In terms of later stage, the ones that are here, these aren't really venture funds. They're more I guess, providers of capital that in a structured way can get you equity, or get cash into your business without taking equity. So Tamaya typically does it via structured loans, Vistara, venture debt, Espresso, shred loans and some venture debt, and then same thing with Volante. But just to emphasize, these are groups that can be part of an intelligently crafted solution to give entrepreneurs access to capital without necessarily diluting themselves by issuing equity, or just using other methods to raise capital when there's either no ability or desire to use treasury shares to do so. That's kind of the overview from my side of the world.
Thank you very much, Hans. And one thing I'll note is that firms with an asterisk are part of the BC Renaissance Fund, which is the investment arm of the provincial government in British Columbia. So they put money into funds with a lot of the firms that are here. I'm going to move on a little bit and just comment a bit about some of the service providers, some of the groups that are active in helping early stage entrepreneurs with raising capital and stuff. And Mike, I know you're familiar with Front Funder. Wondering if you could give us a quick thumbnail on what Front Funder does in the marketplace and how they work with companies. Mike Volker, are you there? Mike, could you unmute, please? Maybe you're muted.
He's talking, but I can't hear him.
Problems here. Perhaps while we're trying to get Mike back online verbally, Falza, could you make a very short comment on how you work with Volition, how Vantech works with Volition partners?
Okay, so we have a lot of as you correctly pointed out earlier, Dave, Vantech takes a lot of the very early stage entrepreneurs, and a lot of them require some extra help. So we partnered up with Volition, so that actually podes what you might call pre-Vantech pitches. And they coach their entrepreneurs, they help them with their pitch, and then the winners of their pitch night are then referred to Vantech.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me now?
Echo, at least I do. I'll just talk.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, Mike, please, if you could speak about what does Front Funder do very briefly for us?
It says, can you hear me?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
I keep getting these messages that say I've been muted by the moderator. I haven't muted myself at all, so somebody's muting me. Okay, anyway, back to Front Funder. So Front Funder uses the crowdfunding exemption, which basically lets companies raise money from people who aren't accredited investors. And just as a segue, one of the things I want to mention is that a lot of startup entrepreneurs don't realize that when they're raising money from private individuals like angel investors, they actually have to be so-called accredited investors, which means they have to meet certain financial requirements set forth by in the case of British Columbia, by the BC Securities Commission. So unless, and an angel and an accredited investor, more or less synonymous terms, by definition means that you have to be either a high income earner or a millionaire. So entrepreneurs think that they can go to their friends, for example, and raise money. But unless you are really good friends and have known that person for more than 2 years, you really can't raise money from, say, strangers. To get around that, because the population consists of only about 4 or 5% that would qualify as people who could invest in a startup. So that begs the question, what about the other 95 or 96%? And that's where crowdfunding comes in. So crowdfunding allows an entrepreneur to raise money from just about anybody. But you have to do that through an accredited platform. And Front Funder is one of those platforms. So you can go there and you can put up your pitch deck, your term sheet, and so on. And basically, instead of raising, say, $500,000 to $1 million from a handful of people like angels, you can raise $500,000 to $1 million or more from thousands of investors investing as little as a few $100s per investor. And that's essentially what Front Funder does. It facilitates crowdfunding. And personally, I think it's great because it means that people who aren't angel investors by definition, according to the financial test, can also invest in startups. And of course, for startups, it's a great alternative because they can raise a lot of money in small amounts from a large number of people. And what that means too is for the investors, they're limited as to how much they can invest. And in that way, the commission basically protects investors. So if you have a bunch of failures, you're not really going to lose your shirt. You're just going to lose a small amount of money. And I think that's working out quite well. And I know that Front Funder has raised a lot of money for a lot of startups.
Great, thank you, Mike. I wondered if we could ask Falza or Hans just to comment briefly on Tandem, and then I'll just say a few words about Valhalla, Momentum, and a few others before we move on and try to go to Q&A. We're down to about 15 minutes remaining.
Okay, I'll start, and then Hans can finish about Tandem. Tandem is another Vantech partner where we have a partnership with Volition for pre-Vantech companies. We have a partnership with Tandem for post-Vantech companies. So these companies that have pitched to Vantech will get to have services from Tandem to help them beef up their deal room. So any investor that comes to a Vantech meeting can be pretty confident that the companies that are pitching at Vantech will have Tandem services to make sure that their deal room is set up and ready to go. Hans?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good summary. I think our exposure to Tandem has been as a later stage investor into a couple of the earlier deals that they did out of their Tandem launch fund. But I think you've accurately captured their place in the market, and they certainly are experienced enough, I think, to be able to bring value to the place where they're participating. So, no, nothing further from my side on those guys.
Sure. So Momentum is somewhat similar to Tandem and how they operate in that they have CFO and accounting services that they can offer to companies. And they're also working with one of the co-working spaces over in the Main Street area in Vancouver. So relatively active and growing in the marketplace. Also mentioned briefly with Valhalla, originally it's from Alberta. And a lot of their activity, they're very active in the Okanagan, Calgary, Edmonton area. So if you are an entrepreneur with something which fits oil and gas or some technology thing that's like that, it's a different group of angel investors that Valhalla can help you introduce yourself to. We know about accelerators, and reality is accelerators operate as some service providers as well. Two I'll mention at the end are later stage, by far, Garibaldi and Fort Capital. They help companies raise Series A or Series B later rounds. One of the key differentiators is Garibaldi is ICT and software, and Fort Capital is really in, I would call them clean tech and ag tech. So just ask Jim to comment briefly about this, some of the other things. There are a lot of service providers in the marketplace. Lawyers and accountants obviously are very active. Can you give us a quick thumbnail for a little bit about what a good service provider would look like for you?
Sure. One of the things that I'm assuming that most of the folks listening to us are entrepreneurs and are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. And as you start a company, there's this whole ecosystem out there of people that think that they can provide you with services. And it's really incumbent upon you when you meet these folks or start talking to them about the services they might provide you, that you vet them well. Because just like in any market or space, there's those that are good and reputable, and there's those that are less so. And so the kinds of things you want to check out is ask them about companies that look like you that they've worked with in the past, and in fact ask for references from those companies. And then ask them about who their accountant. More about them to whether you can be, because the world cash or an equity about money that you're going to be working with.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to move into Q&A right away. We've got about 10, 12 minutes remaining. So I'm going to reduce the share of the screen so that we can see everybody better. Are investors doing new deals? Are there examples? Are we at the same level as COVID, pre-COVID? What happened in Q2 of 2020? And what are some of the announcements? And I'll just ask our panelists to start speaking, and then we can hear how things go. Any comments or any?
So Dave, your last point there, new announcements. Does anybody know about the $500 million that the BC government announced this week?
I know about it, and I think some of their general plans, but maybe I'll let you go first. What you've heard now, I can add a bit of my initial comments.
No, I've heard nothing other than that they've allocated $500 million to invest in tech companies in BC, but it's still a big secret. Is it kind of some election ploy, or is there any substance behind this?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, it's not just tech companies. It's companies that are essential to the restart of the BC economy. So I think it would be important for people to realize, one, we're in an election. That's a big point. Number two, there are no staff presently around who would be able to execute this program. Those people need to be hired or brought in from other government departments, which of course will depend on the outcome of the election, where they need to staff that. Secondly, I think people should expect a multiple layered approach. This was in the government news release, and we've heard this from a few channels. Multiple layered approach to selection of what kinds of companies will get this capital, both in terms of their technological merit, their employee base, their likelihood of growing employees, impact on the environment, diversity. These are all things that are going to weigh into these considerations, different parts of the economy, different parts of the province. So I will go this far. I do not believe this is a panacea or a major drop in the bucket for the Vancouver tech community. I don't think it's positioned that way. That's not what this is meant to go and do based on what we have heard. But it's obviously a positive. A lot of details yet to be worked out, and I think it could be some time before capital flows from this entity, but we'll have to wait and see.
I've just a quick question for Jim. Do you have any estimate of how many investments, we'll call it Cascadia Angels in the U.S. make in BC companies every year or every couple of months? Do you have any gauge of what the activity level is like right now?
Yeah. I'll answer that in a more general way and then come back to your specific question. I'll answer that in a more general way and then come back to your specific question. I think that good companies are still getting deals done at reasonable prices. And the best example of that is the company that Yazil mentioned earlier that I was a part of, and that's Barrelwise. We looked at that company and concluded it really made a lot of sense, and we thought that they were being realistic in their expectations. And so we made an investment in that company. And you see that over and over again. The companies that are not seeing investments as readily these days are ones that are a little more.
Okay.
Is it? They're going to follow a second round of money into a company that needs it for whatever reason. Coming back to your question, I would say that of the companies that we've invested in, which is about 10 at this point, 2 of them have been Canadian companies. I think that that's probably about the same percentage in Seattle, but that's just off the cuff without really having a lot of statistics.
Just before I ask for other comments from panelists, a number of people have asked if we can share the slides. The answer is yes. Please contact Venture Labs, and we can share the slides with you in case you'd like to have a copy of them. We can also assist people with understanding, how the marketplace is playing out a little bit. Just a quick question. Did Mike just leave again, or did he just disappear? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. That's interesting.
Looks like it.
If I may add to Jim's comments, because we have 2 semi-formal structures that really encourage cross-border investing. One is the Pacific Northwest Angel Group that Jim and I are members of, and we have a lot of investments going back and forth. The other one is also the Keiretsu Forum, and Vantech is actually a very close partner with Keiretsu Forum Northwest, and Vancouver is one of the 5 stops for their 5-city tour out of Keiretsu Forum. And Keiretsu Forum is a global angel network. So if an entrepreneur qualifies for, say, Keiretsu Forum Florida, they have the right to present at Keiretsu Forum Northwest. So we get a lot going there. Likewise with any Canadian companies, particularly Vancouver-based companies, they have the option of going through other Keiretsu Forum chapter events around the world. So there's a lot of activity and there is a lot of investment happening.
So just to answer a couple of questions out of the chat, somebody inquired earlier on about early stage medtech funding and which funds are active. I'd actually point you towards Thousand and eFund. That's something that Thousand is very knowledgeable of. And I think that if eFund is a potential, and she could also refer you to others. Another quick question about how many angels or so are active in the Vantech network? What do you think, Dalzell? Is it 100, just over 100?
Well, we have well over 100 members. So we include community members and service providers, but actual investors, we're estimating somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4. Because I recognize a lot of those names, they either invest on their own or they invest through funds like eFund and Woodif. Or they might do both.
And answer a question from Michael Klauser. Yes, the Keiretsu Forum is still active in Vancouver. Pre-COVID, they were running monthly in-person events, and now they're doing some virtual events.
Yeah, they're still running virtually now.
All right, Mike's back. Okay, we had a quick question from Razan. I think interesting opportunity. I would suggest you start by going to the Vantech Angel Network. And really start there and see if that's a good fit for you. Other questions, other comments from our panelists. Can I ask Hans or Mike if they think that the level of investment is going to increase or decrease as we go forward?
Oh, I think it's going to increase. Couple of reasons for that. You have there has been no material wealth destruction for the high net worth crowd, who are predominantly the angel investors, unlike the 2008 contraction. Number two, just as a follow-on point to that, the decline in interest rates has further pushed people towards riskier asset classes in an attempt to returns and or yields. And on the institutional side, which is the area that we have some visibility into particularly, it's the same thing, which is the large pension funds, the large institutional investors, holding fixed income securities to any large degree. They're looking to reach for both yield through other instruments, as well as move into other asset classes more aggressively than they have in the past, in order to generate the returns commensurate with their longer term obligations. So all of this means more money coming in. There's a ton of cash on the sidelines at on the public markets as well. We're among the highest cash positions of the last 10 years. So I believe we're going to continue to see capital moving in to the sector for some period of time. This isn't going to be a year or two. This could be 5 to 10 years.
Okay, a quick question from Graham. Maybe Jip could comment. Can you provide some insight into which industries or verticals you're most interested in financing currently? Which ones are getting most interest? Is there something you could give us a suggestion about?
Yeah, I saw that question, and there's two parts to my comment. One is typically in Washington State, simply because of the industries that have created a lot of angels, we look at a lot of software companies and a lot of med tech companies. Clean tech companies are a harder deal for angel investors just simply because of the amount of the investment and over the length of time. But if you back up from a moment, I'm an ex-sales guy, and so I always talk about qualifying customers when I was selling. It's the same thing when you're an entrepreneur. You need to qualify your potential investors and figure out which investors are interested in the kind of business you want to start. Don't waste your time on somebody that's only going to invest in healthcare companies if you've got a software company that you're doing. So it's really about finding the people that are interested in your kind of company.
What are you seeing? Mike, maybe you could comment on what's really of interest right now in the angel community deals you're looking at.
Looking specifically, of course, the AI, for example, is hot, and to your earlier point about investing in the future, I think the available capital is increasing. We're seeing a lot of successful exits in the tech sector. More and more companies are being acquired.
Excuse me, Mike. Sorry, Mike, we can't hear you.
Mike, we're having trouble hearing you.
You can put on
Sounds like you should be,
headphones, that would be helpful.
sounds like you're in a rainstorm and should be investing in a rain jacket.
I've muted you for a
So-
moment, but if you can try to unmute you and use headphones. Unfortunately,
Yeah, we'll see if we're getting anywhere.
Yeah, I'll pipe in with other sectors that we're seeing a lot of activity in. We're, as Jim has pointed out, we see a lot of activity in medtech. We seem to be placed in the Pacific Northwest, where there's a good cluster of knowledgeable angels with medtech knowledge. Another one, which explains why we invest in Barrowwise, is ag tech. We're starting to see a good cluster of ag tech, food tech type companies. So much so that we're dedicating the month of November 4th. Our Vantech meeting will be themed ag tech, food tech, and we'll probably see some more companies from there.
All right. Mike, can we try one more time and see if we can hear your comment? Unfortunately, it's really background noise. It isn't working very well. No, it's not working for us. All right. In any case, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to really thank all our panelists for joining us today. It's just after 12:30. We've hit our 1 hour time limit. So once again, thank you to Thalzo Lee, to Jim Thompson, to Hans Knapp and Mike Volker. Also to the people who set everything up for us in the background. And if anybody would like to reach out to any one of the people who are on the panel or some of the other people who are active in the marketplace, just please contact us at Venture Labs, and we'd be happy to try to provide a little bit of connectivity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully you enjoy some of the other sessions that are part of Vancouver Startup Week. Thank you very much.